Hi, Keller Williams Advantage. It's Jessica Swaffer with Susan Beach and Debbie Dennis today, and we are coming to you with a series of sessions. There are contract series, and today we're going to start with prep work for writing the offer. This will lead us into Wednesday. We'll be talking about presenting this offer, and then on Friday we're going to talk about the condition forms, aka contingency forms, and how those work along with the contract and how to present them. So the reason that we decided to do this is that, number one, we always have paid help writing their first offer. So this is a great resource. And then for those of you who've been practicing real estate for a while, you may find that what we go over today is a great resource for you to be able to organize and communicate effectively with your buyers, because even before COVID-19, our business has changed as such that we are digitally writing the offer. The way it used to be back in the day, if you went out and showed properties, and one of those properties the buyer wanted to put an offer in on, you would generally have them come back to the office or meet you there in a few hours, and you would sit and go over this information and ask them these questions as you were writing the offer. Well, today you don't necessarily do that, and so this may become an effective way for you to get all of the information up front. So do you guys want to say anything before we move forward?
The only thing I want to say is this is an incredible form that you have created and are going to put out there for our associates to use. I think having a template to follow to get prepared takes so much of the anxiousness off of the associate. And I don't care how long you've been in the business, you get a little bit anxious when you're writing an offer for somebody to purchase a piece of real estate. And I just think this is just a wonderful template. And I'm really, really excited about our associates having this tool.
Cool, thank you.
Take it away, Jack.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. You guys make sure that you can see it. Okay, let me go here. Can you see this? My Let's Write Your Offer?
Yes.
Okay. So this is, again, something that I put together only because I found that when I was helping agents, and they were predominantly newer agents, that I'd go, okay, do you know what their offer price is going to be? Have you found out what earnest money, so on and so forth? And so that's how this form came about. Now, there is a big pink bar on this side that talks about prep work 101. And it says here, you may print these items or have them available in digital form. And for today being a digital offer prep, we're going to just assume that you will download these and have them in digital form. So you want to download the disclosures from MLS to review ahead of time. I hope everyone is doing that right now when you go and show properties, or you have them available to look at if there is interest, only because if they really love the home, then they see something on the disclosure that may mess up your offer writing time, if they decide, ooh, maybe I don't like that because of what the disclosures say. So that's part of your prep work as well. You want to also have the MLS printout available on your screen. You'll notice today when we go through some of this that I have it up and I'm just switching back and forth on my screens. For those of you who have a dual screen setup, this will be much easier for you. But there's a lot of information in the MLS printout that we need for when we are writing the contract, and we'll go over those items here in a sec. You'll want to have the tax record. If this does go through to be a ratified contract, then that's part of the documents you'll need to turn into the office. However, that gives you the seller's name or who's on title. And I've seen contracts before, Debbie and Susan, I'm sure you have too, where the seller's name is blank. And I always wonder, why did they do that? They could just pull that up in the tax record. So you'll want to have that handy as well. And then this is something that you would do as a prep work item, but just running a market analysis of the area of where the house is at, only because one of the questions I'm sure they're going to ask is, you know, you go, well, what do you want to offer for this property? Well, I don't know. What do you think? Well, it's not up to us to give our opinion or our suggestion. We have to offer them some data in the area that will make them have a, you know, make that decision of what they'd like to offer. So that's really a prep work item as well. And then once you have this questionnaire filled out and you have all this information, you can prepare an initial cost to buyer, which they absolutely will want, especially that may change some of the items that you're making on the offer if you put that in front of them. So all of those things are important. Everybody good so far? Any additions? Okay. So at the top here, we have the let's write the offer. Will the buyer be financing the home or paying cash? It's a big question. If they're financing, what type of financing? Is it conventional, FHA, VA? Have they even talked to a lender? Hopefully they have at that point, that you've gotten a pre-qualification letter or a pre-approval letter. And you might notice that we did change this to say current pre-qualification or pre-approval letter. With what is happening right now in our industry, that is a very important question to ask. They may have been approved, you know, 30, 60 days ago. So they want to get an updated current pre-qualification or pre-approval.
Jess, I always encourage associates to talk to the buyer's lender before they write the offer, because buyers don't really always grasp what they've been told in a pre-approval process. They don't know really how much they have a lot of times for down payment and closing costs and prepaids. And those are the the closing costs and prepaids are, that's language they're not familiar with. We are. So it's really helpful to talk to the lender and ask them what kind of cash assistance are they going to need to be able to buy a house that you just pre-qualified them for, and what kind of loan did you pre-qualify them for, because a lot of times the buyers don't know.
That is absolutely, here, I'm going to switch you guys to my other screen here. That is absolutely correct. And they also need to ask that because of, you know, if they did plan on asking for any closing costs or assistance from the seller, that's something that the lender is going to be able to give them that information. The other reason is to be able to fill out the finance supplement or addenda as well correctly. I find that a lot of times when we get to that, a lot of agents don't know what they're putting down and how much the loan amount is going to be. And so we'll get there. So that basically goes into these two questions there. Also, if they're paying cash, they have to have a proof of funds letter from the buyer's bank. This is something that I go back and forth again, and Debbie, you may or may not, in this digital age, it's really easy to get a copy of this emailed from their bank for the buyer, but that is something that you've got to prove to the seller they have funds to purchase the property, right? Mm-hmm. So, and then does the buyer have to sell their current home to buy this home? Again, this has to go, or this has to do with contingency, and we'll go over a lot of this on Friday. But if yes, what type of contingency or condition form will they be using in that situation? What's the offer price they'd like to make? How much earnest money would the buyer like to deposit? And just as a reminder, our market normally dictates about 1% of the purchase price, but the amount is decided by the buyer. Yes, ma'am. Susan. Oh, we can't hear you.
I've got myself muted. Sorry.
It's okay.
I'm still at the house. I'm afraid my doggy's going to bark. So, and I could be out of touch here, so don't, it won't hurt my feelings if you tell me. In the day when I was doing all of this, certainly we wanted the buyer to have that pre-approval because it made their offer stronger. Mm-hmm. But an agent in the day could not refuse to present an offer because they didn't have a pre-qual letter yet. Is that true now still?
Still correct.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I took a call from an agent who's been in the business for a long time last week, and she says they don't have it yet. They couldn't get it from the lender for whatever reason until tomorrow. And I'd like to tell her I just can't present the offer. And I said, well, that's not true. You don't have to have a pre-qualification or pre-approval letter to present the offer. It's a good practice to do.
Yeah, good. Okay, thank you. Just want to clarify.
Yep, you're good. I like the questions. Debbie, did you have anything?
Well, in today's climate of multiple offers, I would have to say that an offer, if it were presented without a pre-approval letter or a pre-qualification letter with multiple offers, I think it would go to the bottom of the pile. I don't think you're doing your offer any favors at all to try to make that happen.
That's a great point.
Absolutely. Well, and I hope by the time they get to this point where they're writing the offer that they have that information. I mean, that's something you should be doing with your client, in my opinion, or that's my position, before you even go and show properties. That's just
Jessica,
good practice.
At buyer consultation, what a great conversation to have to get the buyer to go on and get that in hand. And send it to the agent so the agent has it in the event that they happen to find a house that weekend. And
yeah.
they've got the paper in hand in an email that they can attach to an offer and not lose a house because they had to wait.
Well, and that's where I think, these sessions that we've been doing, like when Jen Sanders did the buyer consultation, that's huge. You really do need to be prepping your buyers of, this is a multiple offer market right now. It really is for many homes, not all homes, but many homes. And especially if they're buying in a certain price range. And so just to say, we want to have everything ready to go. And again, that's why I think even if you've been practicing real estate, this form is so big because you could get everything together and you'd be able to write your offer very quickly, but efficiently. Go ahead.
In light of Shift of the book, this is the beginning of bulletproofing your transaction.
Oh, that is so true. That is so true. So cool. I'm glad we're all talking about this. So, and then there's other items like, when would the buyers like to close on the property? Okay. So we always usually suggest 45 days. In light of our market now, we have put on there 45 to 60-day close. Remember, your contract does say you can close on or before. So if everything works out where you can close ahead of time, great. It's just, we want to be careful because if it's going to be after the close date, then you have to have something in writing by both parties to extend the closing date. And then we ask about appliances or inclusions that, again, this is something that's referenced in the MLS data sheet. So it's good to have that information. Talk to them about what type of inspections the buyer are going to complete. And is there a home warranty being offered by the seller? Again, that should be referenced in MLS. And if it's not, or if a residential service agreement or home warranty is not being offered by the seller, does the buyer want to ask for one? So these are all really good questions for you to be able to write that offer. And then this last question talks about closing costs paid for by the seller. And we've just put on there, as a reminder, conventional financing, it can only be up to 3% in closing costs. And then FHA, VA, I believe VA up to 6%. Mm-hmm. Is that correct, Debbie?
Yes.
Kind of changes sometimes lender to lender. And then the last but not least, are there any additional provisions that need to be stated in paragraph 13? So that is everything that we have on the form. We feel like that covers your offer at a really high level. And again, this is one conversation that you're having with the client. You could be filling this out and you could say, okay, I'm going to digitally prepare your offer and then I'm going to send it to you and we're going to go over the offer when that happens. And again, we'll go through that at a later time. Okay, any questions so far? We're good to go?
Good to go.
Okay, so I did a little research and I've actually picked a live property. I'm going to switch my screens. Can you guys see MLS?
Yes.
See. Okay, I'm going to minimize our Zoom here. So this is a live property in MLS, and it has a few different scenarios on here, so I thought it would be a good property to use. But whenever I'm looking through this, I'm looking at things, obviously the list price, how many days has it been on the market? Again, as prep work, I would have already done a market analysis on this. And then that way, if they ask me, what should I offer? Then I've got some data that I can share with them. The other thing that I'm looking at is there any appliances that need to be included? The dishwasher, microwave, and range oven are pretty standard, but what if there was a refrigerator or washer or dryer? These are things that I would like to restate in the contract if that was the case. The other great thing that MLS gives you are your taxes. You'll need that for your cost of buyer. And then also one of the things I liked that I noticed here is that there is a 1-year home warranty or residential service agreement offered by the seller. So these are all those different factors. And then also I'll always look at the broker remarks to see if there's anything specific in there, like anything that's exempt from inspections or items of that nature that I need to make sure that the buyer is aware of. All right. So I'm going to leave this screen up because we're going to go back and forth. And again, as prep work, just in case you don't know, if you are newer, this is where you can get your documents for the file as well. Remember, I talked about disclosures. You can click on this little icon here and it will actually pop up this screen that I already have with the different disclosures on the property. And you can kind of see behind my screen, I didn't want to close it necessarily, that there was also showing instructions that this agent uploaded, most likely for what is happening right now with COVID-19. And I thought that was really good to point out. But obviously here are your disclosures, and you're going to want to click this little arrow here to download them to your computer. You can also print them if you were doing it non-digital. Okay, so at this point, I have talked with my buyers. I've gotten all of the information on the prep sheet that I need. And so now I'm going to pop over to .loop, and we're just going to put this together. Now we are only going to go through the contract prep and then also how to bring the disclosures in here, only because of time allowance for today. But just know I'm not going to spend a lot of time on areas of the contract because we're presenting that on Wednesday. So I'm going to add a loop. And we always suggest just using the address. So I'm going to look at my cheat sheet here. Now you could copy and paste this if you wanted to from MLS. I like to, put something specific. Debbie and I are the buyers on this property. So I like to put the last name of my buyers. And then you'll hit continue. And you're going to select your template. And you'll notice we have several templates put together for our agents. We have listing residential, vacant land, same thing on contracts. We also have this scan and upload option for those of you, or if you did have to do a contract in writing on paper, you can just simply scan and upload. So I'm going to choose the contract residential. And it asks you to upload a photo. Again, this is nothing that you necessarily have to do. It just helps you identify the loop a little better. So when you hit done, it will create that loop and you go to view loop to look at all of your forms. And this template that we created is going to pull in all the necessary forms that you need as part of your transaction. So, and they are kind of put together. You'll notice the disclosure of brokerage duties is the very first form, because that, if you haven't done that at a buyer consult, then that talks to your buyer of how you're going to be representing them in this transaction. So they're put together a certain way specifically for that reason. Any questions so far, ladies? You're my gallery today. Okay. Now, the other thing I want to bring your attention to, in case you did not know this. So again, for those of you who have been practicing, you may utilize .loop in a totally different way, and that's fine. We have just tried to make this as easy as possible. And you'll notice here that these are kind of grayed out documents. They're not bold like the contract is. And the reason is they're placeholders. We know that they're documents that we need for the transaction, but for instance, on the finance supplemental, we leave it as a placeholder because we don't necessarily know what type of financing you're going to utilize or if it's going to be a cash sale. So now that I know it, I'm just choosing, I've made the assumption of conventional, then I'm going to click add file and I'm going to pull it from my templates. And we've got several templates already made up for contracts, conventional, FHA, VA. So if I click on my folder for conventional, I'm just going to highlight the conventional loan supplemental and I'm going to copy it over to the loop. So now my finance supplemental is in there. The other placeholder is that for the property disclosures or disclaimer form, which I have already downloaded to my computer from MLS. So on this one, we're going to add them, and we're going to add them from my computer. And there they are. Give it a second. And now you have your disclosures in there. So these disclosures, as a reminder, are already filled out by the seller and initialed and signed. We will spend a little time making these digital for your buyers today. And then the last, well, there's a couple more items for your tax record and then one for your cost to buyer. The reason the cost to buyer is a placeholder is that some agents do choose to pull it from our templates here in .loop, which is totally fine. Those are blank and you use them to fill in the blanks. Or you can utilize the, I'll pop back here for a second. You can utilize the finance net sheets in MLS if that's what you choose to do. A lot of agents utilize those only because they auto-calculate several of the costs for you, and then you have to put in your offer price and other variables.
Jess, on the cost to buyer, I just want to comment for our newer associates that if you receive a copy of the estimated closing costs from the lender, that is not considered by OREC our cost to buyer file audit document. Now, you're perfectly within legal rights to copy the lender's numbers. In other words, if he says an appraisal is going to cost $600 in his estimated cost to buyer, you can put $600 in your cost to buyer. But OREC says we have to prepare and have in our file assigned cost to buyer.
Correct. And, oh, go ahead, Susan.
Debbie, what's the OREC's rationale for that?
Well, pardon?
I said it's a good rationale. I hope I haven't put you on the spot.
No, well, let me go back to net. This is not net to seller, but I will say to me, net to seller is so important. I'm bunny trailing here because we are the only ones that give the seller an estimate of what he will be netting as a result of the contract he's accepting. So that one far and away is so important. Cost to buyer is there are things that are involved in the transaction like inspections and additional costs that could come up or need to be disclosed to the buyer that won't be on the lender's form. Is that what you were saying?
Well, yes, and if I can expand it just a little bit, OREC's primary rationale for this is to make sure that you are actually having a conversation with your buyers, and as Debbie says, with your sellers, because the same requirement is made of sellers on the net to seller, that you're actually having a conversation with them about this and not just relying on a third-party document to throw into .loop so your people can look, because it's not accurate, plus the fact it is not truly representing your client the way we are obligated to do.
That's absolutely, well, and the other thing I was going to add is that the lender's information won't have title charges or abstracting costs or anything like that, which the buyer's going to have some costs in that area. So there are additional things, just like Debbie said, as in inspections and so on.
Right.
So anything else so far? These are all really good points. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go in here and update some of these documents so we're just going to fill in the blanks today. I am going to check mark all of my documents just for those of you who choose to edit and update all the documents, which I think you should go ahead and do. You can check mark the spot right next to the contract name, and it will highlight all of your documents below. And then you're just going to open. So then everything is together. Now, before it even has me go into the documents, this is one of the things I love about our electronic transaction systems, is that it's going to pop up and say, here are all the areas that you can autofill, so you don't have to do them manually. So what do you want to autofill? Take the time to fill this stuff out. It will just help you so much through the transaction, because then you're just tweaking the documents after you do these autofills, and it just makes it so much faster. So I'm going to go ahead, when you're adding names, ask the buyers for their full legal names. You know, I've had a situation in the past where somebody went by the name Rocky, and their legal name was James, and that's how they signed legal paperwork. So there you go. So you're just adding your buyers, and even though I'm the buyer's agent on this, I'm going to go ahead and add bogus email address. Okay. And then when you come over to the seller, again, this is somewhere where you can find this. I'm going to pop back over to Matrix real quickly. There's a little TX button right under the photo of your home. If you click that, that takes you into the tax record of the property, and it will show the seller's name on this. So just because I have it up, I'm gonna utilize it, but this is something that you can fill in as well. Now, you don't have to have their email address because they're not your client. Dayton Likens, I need to put his initial in there. Oh, where'd that go? Okay. You'll add them, and then you'll add seller number 2. Sorry, I'm popping back and forth. Don't make your eyes cross. Okay, and that's all I'm going to add for the sellers. Then I'm going to identify the buying agent, which is me. I hope that's me on there, since I'm on there twice. And then you're going to identify the listing agent. Again, spend some time on this area, because the very last page of the contract actually puts or has the broker's information on it. And if you fill it in here, everything will be filled in, you know, over on that side. So again, this is where I may actually click on the listing agent. That's why I wanted to do a live listing, and pop you guys over there for a second. I'm going to actually copy and paste their info just to make it easy. So you can see I'm popping back and forth, but it's for a reason. And then you can actually do their email address from here, and their company name and address, which will be needed on that back page. And let's go back here. So they're in the Broken Arrow office. And then the agent's cell phone will be there. I don't know if that's part of it. I think it is. So you can go ahead and grab that from there. And then their license number. A lot of agents go, well, how would I know that? Well, it's all in MLS. And so is the broker's entity number as well. So you got their info here. Oh, that was the license number. So back in MLS, their license number is going to be this number that follows their name. 3943. Sorry, I talked to myself. So, all right. So add them, take some time to do that, only because it will make your life easier on the back end. All right, and then we don't use buying broker, listing broker. And then you'll put the property address for the home. You'll want that. Oops, that's not it. Only because every page of the contract will have this address on it. And then that way you don't have to fill that in over and over and over again. Oops, it's not Ohio. Okay, now we're down to the financials. What did they want to purchase on this property? So the property was listed at 217. I'm going to pop you over here again. 217.5. Whenever I did a comp on the neighborhood, because I did do that just for my knowledge, this is actually a really good price. So I would have given the buyers all of this data, and let's just say they wanted to come in at 215. We could put that in the purchase price. And then how much earnest money are they going to put down? Again, the market dictates generally, or the norm is about 1%, but it's up to them. So at this price, I would absolutely say, you know, 2,000 would be a very strong earnest money to put in to be deposited. So I'm going to use that as my assumption. And we are going to put that Chenoweth and Cohen will be the listing broker. Again, in MLS, sometimes MLS, they'll have information that the earnest money will be held at a title company. That's another reason to really look at the information in there. We always put the listing broker because we've been told that ultimately the listing broker is responsible for the earnest money. But again, this could be a negotiable item. And then here's the closing date. So I picked a closing date way out. I actually picked one for June 26th. That's right in between 45 and 60 days. It's almost to the 60-day mark, just to give them ample time to close. And then we don't necessarily use offer expiration dates. Actually, we do. Gary wanted me to put that in there. So we are going to use that date. And then there's nothing that I saw in the MLS that was actually an inclusion. Debbie, I'm going to ask you this because I've seen both ways. What's your position as far as should we go ahead and restate disposal, dishwasher, those type of items?
No, I don't think that's necessary, but items that are not commonly viewed by the lender as acceptable for the lender to make a loan on. In other words, the lender expects to make a loan on an oven and a stove and a dishwasher and a built-in microwave. What they don't regard as the norm would be washers and dryers and refrigerators. And those, to me, the most important thing, because they're not built in and considered as inclusions typically and normally, if just because it's in MLS does not mean that it will convey. The seller is making an offer through MLS, but when the buyer and the agent draw up the contract, if it was stated in the MLS that the refrigerator and the washer and the dryer remain, that has to be put in the contract to assure the buyer they will get the refrigerator and the washer and dryer. I think, my opinion is, Susan, weigh in on this, it ought to be put on a chattel bill of sale because a lender doesn't want to make a 30-year loan on a refrigerator and a washer and dryer that can walk out the door next week. And
Yes,
I think
yes.
you ought to sell it for $1, have the buyer come to closing with a dollar bill and pay for the washer and the dryer and the refrigerator.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons on that prep sheet, it says, or on a chattel/bill of sale form, you know, what else? Refrigerator, washer, dryer. If they were selling their dining table, you wouldn't want that in the contract for sure. Okay. Okay, so I have auto-filled all the documents. Now we're just going to go through and kind of fill out some of the blanks. We are not going to check mark this top area because it is not an in-house transaction. However, just so you guys know, Keller Williams Advantage, Premier, or Preferred would all be considered an in-house transaction. Even though they're separate from us financially, the public perceives us as one broker. So I'm going to mark that the buyer has received and reviewed the disclosure statement. And since this property was built after 1978, I'm going to mark that it was constructed after 1978. And you can see here, buyers have a place to sign and sellers have a place to sign. There's the address already filled in. Now I have the option to go in and put what type of financing that I have. This is your snapshot for your contract, so you want to make sure to pay attention to this area. Gives the listing agent a heads up. The other thing that Dotloop does that I don't necessarily love is they put Dayton K. Likens and Julia L. Well, and you guys can give me your opinion. I just usually put a comma on those names. Same thing for Debbie and myself. Comma here. Now, the other thing that I like to put is you don't have to put familial status, but your title company may want to know these items, so they may love you for it. So since Debbie and I, we are going to be we're going to be taking title as mother and daughter. I'm going to put that on there. And then you'll notice there's the county, there's the legal description already filled in. Property address, purchase price, earnest money, all of that is already in there. And I may go through and just restate some of these days here. You can leave them blank if you want to, but I always go through and restate it. And then you can see at the bottom of each page that everyone is going to be initialing off on each page of the contract. Now, everybody has their own way of doing things on the time reference date. For Gary's purposes, for Gary presenting this, he likes a date in the time reference date. And you can post date that if you want to. Some people leave it blank because then it just gives them three extra days. Some people who are black and white and want a date there, you can put that date there, and you can even post date it out to give yourself a little bit of time for negotiation if that's the case. So I'm going to put this for April 30th. And then because of what's going on with COVID-19, I don't know how everything's going to pan out these next couple of weeks, but I would give yourself ample time to get your inspectors out there. This would also ring true in a normal summer market. So I'm going to go ahead and put 15 days in there. Do you guys agree on that? Okay. So we're filling in the blanks. Now, when you get to your TRR spot, I would still suggest that 7 days. If you feel you're going to go beyond that 7 days, you can always extend these timelines, whether it's inspections or TRR. You can also go ahead and put 10 days here if you prefer, but I'm going to go ahead and stick with the 7. And the lender is going to require that they have title insurance on this property. We always suggest to the buyers, since the lender's requiring it, you might as well go ahead and get a joint policy. It will cover you when you go to sell the property, other than just an attorney's title opinion. So we're going to click that option there. I am not going to have my buyers initial a land or boundary survey, which is a pin and stake, unless they, for some reason, told me they wanted to. And that, again, that's you communicating with your client. The seller will pull a survey for the property. So you can see a lot of those property lines from that. And then if we were working with the buyer, this is, again, just our position, under title requirements, it says 30 days if left blank. We like to give the buyer the option to get out of the contract if there is title requirements, if they couldn't move forward. So we always suggest 10 days. However, if they're okay with, let's say there's a title requirement and it's going to extend closing 60 days, but they were okay with that, then they can move forward in the contract. Otherwise, it gives them the option to get out after 10 days versus having to wait at least 30 days, which is what they have there in the blank. And Gary will go over more of that with us as well. Now, remember, we did see in MLS that there is a home warranty or residential service agreement being offered. If that is the case, there's already one in place, then you would select option B. However, you would want to communicate with the listing broker or listing agent and also ask them, is this a basic home warranty or is it an extended home warranty. That kind of makes a difference on what they'll cover. And if it was just a basic and your buyer wanted, the extended, you could put something like that in additional provisions. For the sake of time, we're not going to necessarily go over that today. However, I am going to put a note in additional provisions to see finance supplement, because we are going to ask for closing costs, just to kind of show you guys this whole process. And here is where your termination of offer deadline is. So again, this is for, this is my opinion, you guys can weigh in too, but this is for this to be presented to the seller and communication to follow from the listing agent. The moment that they negotiate back or counter back, this date is a moot point. But generally I would definitely utilize this, especially if the listing agent wasn't very communicative from the beginning and your buyer said, well, we want to make this offer on this property, but we want to know immediately because we want to go make another offer if this one doesn't go through. So again, that would be a reason that you would put a termination of offer date in there. And these are all the signature lines. And then again, here we spent a little time putting in some of this information. My license number is not in here, but most of yours will be. And then you would put the company entity number. And again, where do we find the other agent's company entity number? It's right under their name in MLS. And you can simply copy and paste that in if you so choose. And then I won't mess with their company phone number, but you would put that in there. And then the last item that needs to be filled out, or the couple of items, are the conventional loan supplement. As you can see, the address is already in there. Let's just assume that this client is putting down 20%. And that's what the lender told you. So $215,000, which is the offer price, times 20% is going to be $43,000. So you would take that away from your $215,000, and that would be the loan amount that you would put in this blank. And this next blank is for the earnest money to be available to the buyer until blank, 10 days prior to not including the closing date. Generally, I just advise to go ahead and put 10 days in there. Debbie, do you want to talk about that?
Well, I just would say that that number is negotiable, and that needs to be a conversation with your buyer and with your lender. I think the spirit of why we at GTAR chose to create our own financial supplement was that agents throughout the state were allowing, if you will, not really the right word, but were allowing or recommending that buyers could actually get out of the contract the day of closing or the day before closing and still get their earnest money back. And that's just not in the spirit of cooperation. It is not a good standard of practice. And so the GTAR Standard Forms Committee years ago wanted to adopt a financial supplement that said that the buyer had to give the seller 10 days notice prior to closing if they were not going to be able to close in order to get their earnest money back. But that day, those days are negotiable depending on the circumstances and the situation.
Good.
Will that work? Susan, was that okay?
That's good. Okay. So, and then the other blank on this, what is for, the buyers to proceed with getting all of their loan documents into the lender. And I just go ahead and restate the 10 days there if left blank. The other thing is, remember, I did note that we were going to be asking for some closing costs paid for by the seller. We see that a lot in our market. So you do have to write that into the additional provisions of the conventional loan supplemental. FHA and VA actually have a line item for that, but we do write that here. This is just a good phrase to utilize. Now, remember, on conventional, the seller can only pay up to 3% of closing costs. So on the 215, that would have been 6,450, but we're asking for 5,000.
And Jess, I want to restate what you just said about FHA and VA having a line item. We have had more than one occasion where we have put an amount as working with the buyer in the line item, and the listing agent overlooked it. And I know of one that the deal, it was after there had been a ratification and an acceptance, and the listing agent realized that she had not disclosed to the seller that he was obligated to pay $5,000 in closing costs, and it caused great grief. So restating that even in an FHA and a VA as you have it there is, I just think it's a really good business practice for communication.
Yeah, it catches people's eyes for sure.
Yes.
When there's additional writing, for sure. Okay, last thing is, remember we pulled our disclosures, and we do, since they're PDFs from MLS, we do have to make those digital for the buyer to initial and sign. So you're just going to come in here and you're going to add and assign some fields here. So I'm going to say, hopefully this is mine. I'm confused because I'm the agent and the buyer got me there.
That would be
twice.
confusing.
Yeah. So I'm just going to hope that's the one that we need. Let's see. Did that go? Oh, okay, good. And then so you're going to put that on the first page, and you're going to scroll down. And again, your buyers have already reviewed these disclosures. So you're going to put initials on the second page as well. Yep. If you can get it to go. And I hope you guys are okay with me doing this. I think this is important to show any agent how to utilize their electronic transaction system to the fullest.
Yes.
And then on the back page, there is a signature line. So I'm just adding signatures and I'm adding initials. Okay, there's Jessica. Okay, so now these are all the documents. Obviously, there's some other items that you'll want to address with your buyers, but I'm going to go ahead and save these documents because the biggest things that you want to work on with your offer documents are your contract of sale, your finance supplement, if there is one applicable, your disclosures, and I would have, just like we talked about at the beginning, a pre-qual or a pre-approval letter uploaded into .loop as well. Once you are finished, you're going to send this to the listing, or you're going to send it to the buyers first. And I always want you guys to have conversations with your buyers. Don't just send these documents and go, okay, sign everywhere. They don't know what these documents are saying. And that is the whole reason we're doing the presentation of our offer on Wednesday, so that you understand how to present it and you can do it in a digital format. Now that we have Zoom, you could even do this over the phone. You just click on which items, and hopefully I had a pre-approval there as well, and you'd share it. But here's another great way to communicate and also document that you're communicating. When I share these documents, it's going to the buyers first, and they have option to sign them. I'm also going to attach it to their email as a PDF. And I'm going to say, well, I'm going to say Debbie, because that's her name, Debbie and Jessica. Please click the PDF attachment first and review the contract, and then we will talk over Zoom to go over all details before you sign. And this is a message that they'll see in their email So you're giving them direction. Click on the attachment, review everything, and then we will set up an additional time to talk or Zoom, whatever that may be, to go over all the details. And this actually documents your file.
That's great. I love that.
Awesome.
Yes. Yeah, because then if they come back and go, I was just sent this documents and I mean, I didn't know what I was signing, then you've got an activity log of everything that you sent to the client. And you've got, I mean, that's why they have these little message areas. Use them for sure. So I'm going to go ahead and share them, and then we'll wait for signatures. And we've just prepared and shared our offer digitally. That's it.
That's awesome.
Do you have any other details, anything else that we need to go over today?
This is a great tool, Jessica. I knew you had done this, but I hadn't really gone over it line by line. And it's what Debbie said in the beginning is so true. This is very, very valuable. Gosh, 25 something years ago would have been very valuable for me as a brand new agent to have something like this to walk right through. I'll tell you what I am going to do. I'm going to jump off, ladies, because I got to get on the KWRI call, and I know you will.
Yep.
Finish. But great session. Looking so forward to Wednesday and Friday. This was a great way to introduce your form, Jess. Thank you.
Tell Dawn Beach we said hi too. All right, and we're finished, so you can go ahead and jump off, and we'll see you guys on Wednesday.
Okay, bye.
Thanks.